In this video, I'm going to be talking all about UDIMs and how to make best use of them in PBR Painter. If you are brand new to UDIMs, I'm not going to be going into the fundamental theory, but I will put a link in the description to a really nice tutorial that covers UDIMs and how they work, specifically within Blender. So if that's you, I definitely recommend checking out that video before you watch this one. So in PBR Painter, there is a specific UDIM tab, and this is where you are going to set up your UDIMs for a particular material. So when we click on this tab, we can click Use UDIM Workflow, and everything you need to set up your UDIM workflow is within this panel in here. The only thing we need to do before we start working with UDIMs in PBR Painter is that we need to actually make sure that our UV map is correctly set up for UDIMs. So I'm going to go across now to the UV Editing tab. And I'm just going to show an example of how you might set up your UVs for this kind of UDIM workflow. So what we want to do is we want to separate out our different parts of our UV map onto different tiles. And to do that, I'm going to go to the overlay and I'm going to increase the number of tiles to 3 in the X. So something that's important to note is that the convention with UDIMs is to increase the number of X tiles till 10. If you go beyond 10 tiles, then you start to increase the Y as well. PBR Painter follows this same format, so it's important that you follow this convention with your UV map. So now that I have my 3 tiles that I'm going to use for this example, all I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to move the eyes to the second tile and the ears to the third tile. So I'm going to press L to select the UV islands, and I'm going to press G, X1, and that's just going to move them to the right like that. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the ears, and I'm going to press G, X2, to move them into that tile over there. Obviously there is more you could do in terms of optimizing this space, but for the sake of making a quick video, I'm just going to leave it there and I'm going to jump back to the PBR Painter tab. And at this point, now that I've got my UVs correctly set up for UDIMs, I don't actually have to do anything else outside of this interface here. So now I'm going to go through and explain what all of these different parts do and how to actually go about setting up UDIMs to integrate within PBR Painter. What we basically need to do is to set up our UDIM configuration in here so that everything that happens afterwards will be guided by the settings that we put into here. So when we're adding images for our painting, for example, it's going to pull the information from here to know what kind of image to create. So how many tiles, what kind of resolution, all of those different things. So we can do that manually by adding tiles into this part here. So at the moment we only have 1, so we can add 2 more tiles so that we now have 3. So this matches the configuration that we set up with the UVs. And you can change how you're viewing these tiles either in a list view or in a layout view. So now we've actually got the layout. So if we add a bunch more like this is what it looks like. And you can then remove tiles in the same way. So when you have multiple tiles like this, you can click on individual ones. You can set their name. So we might set number 1 as the head. Number 2 might be the eyes. And this is the ears. And then importantly, you can then change the resolution of all of these tiles, which is a really important feature of UDIMs because you can then apply a lower resolution to the parts of your mesh that are less important and a higher resolution to the really obvious critical areas. But before I go and do that, what I'm going to do is actually remove these because generally there is an easier way to actually create these tiles. And that's by using one of these 2 buttons here. So these are an automated way of actually generating the correct amount of tiles based on either the UV map or based on a reference image. I'm going to leave this second one till later. For now, I'm going to click this one. And what this is going to do is it's going to let me select the UV map. So this is the one that I was just working on earlier. If I click OK, what it does is it finds the UVs from that map, and then it just automatically adds the correct number of tiles. So now I can actually rename these again. And now I might go ahead and specify some different resolutions. So just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to make this a really bad resolution. So something like that. Just so that it's obvious when I do things later that you can actually see the differences between these different regions. Okay, so I've now completely set up my UDIM configuration. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to go back to layers. I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm just going to make this one a painted layer. And when I do that, you'll see under resolution, it is now asking if I want to use the UDIM resolution setting. So if I click OK, I'm now working using a standard painted mask, which is normal for this kind of painted layer. But as you can see in here, it's now created a UDIM tiled image. So this is really cool because this is going to happen all over PBR Painter just because we have this set up in here. And to kind of show what that's going to do, if I start painting across these different regions, and I'll make this a kind of obvious dark color. On the head, I had the 1K resolution, which looks like that. But if I then paint across to the ears, you can see that I now have really bad resolution on the ears. So this is because I'm painting across different tiles, and this is kind of the whole point, or one of the main points of using UDIMs like this. And so at this point, you can pretty much work in PBR Painter as per normal, and ignore the fact that you're working with UDIMs because it's just going to always get these settings from in here. So I'm just going to delete this layer for now. And I'm actually going to create a new layer. And in this case, I'm just going to make it a filled layer. And for this layer, I'm just going to add some PBR textures using this multi-import. And I'm just going to use this bricks material. It doesn't matter what it is, but I'm going to grab all of my images like this. So when I import those images, you may be wondering why the resolution is now really nice on the eyes and the ears, where it's actually specified to be really low. The reason is because we're no longer creating a new UDIM tiled image. We're just working with these PBR textures. So what's actually happening is if we look at these UVs, it's just basically repeating this 4K texture across our different UV tiles. So as you're building a material that's using a UDIM workflow like this, you may have these PBR materials that are appearing at a higher resolution. But what is important is you can then, at the end of that process, when you've built your material and you want to, say, export the model with your UDIM resolution, when you do the baking and you go to material export, what you'll see is we have that same option to then use the UDIM resolution settings. And I'll create an exportable material, and that's going to let us compare the baked material versus this current material. And I click bake. Now, if I go across to this exportable material, what you'll see is it's now correctly baked those ears and eyes into that kind of low resolution image. So in other words, you can build up a really complex layered material using these original high resolution PBR textures. And then at the end of that, you can then bake it according to your UDIM setup. All right, so before I wrap up the video, I'm just going to go back to my original PBR Painter material, back to the UDIM tab, and now I'm going to use this second option here, which is going to get the layout for my UDIMs from an image. So I'm going to remove all of these for now, and I'll set this at some different resolution. Now this is going to basically populate the tiles again based on a UDIM image. So I'm going to use one of the images that I just baked, and that is this base color. So if I just select that one and click generate, as you can see, what it's done is it's now created the right number of tiles, but it's also given it the resolution because it's actually looked at that image and pulled in these settings. So that's really useful if you already have a UDIM image that you want to work with or that you want to base your configuration off. The other thing I'll point out is that this multi-import also works with UDIM tiles. So if you do a multi-import or any other import in PBR Painter and it's a UDIM image, PBR Painter will automatically recognize that, and it will make the required changes to the image settings to make sure that it's represented as a UDIM image. And that way you can import existing images that match up with your UDIM configuration in here. Anyway, that's everything I wanted to cover in terms of UDIMs. For those of you working with UDIMs, I hope you found the video useful. Otherwise, as always, thanks for watching and catch you in another video. Cheers.